Okay, what's your name and when were you on the Beachhead Collective?
My name is Emily Winters. It used to be Cordova at that time. And I don't remember the exact years. I was on the collective with Arnold Springer.
Who else was on it?
We had a pretty large group. There's Brenda Harney, Olga Paulo. Um, and later on, Larry Sullivan joined and Mo joined, and Jerry Goldstein, um, Wendy Reeves,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Chuck Bloomquist,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't think of anybody else right now. But we had a pretty sizable group, and we used to put out a 28-page paper sometimes.
Was Carol Fundiller on at that time?
No, she was not.
Must have been her biggest gap and not
She
being on.
submitted a lot of articles,
Yeah.
and sometimes seems like sometimes she would attend meetings and sometimes not.
Mm-hmm.
But she mostly contributed articles, and we all hated we had to typeset everything. So who could read her handwriting?
Yeah.
You know. And we were very careful not to edit anything. So if we had to make a change of a comma or a word, we'd have to call the person who wrote the article to get permission.
Right.
And there was one time we were close to finishing, and we had a huge paper, and we had a problem with Larry Abrams' article. And so we took out a paragraph. And oh my God, between Larry and Rick Davidson, we were a bunch of racist pigs. We didn't do it to anybody else but the black guy who put in the article. So it took us several years to live that down. We had a lot of camaraderie in the group, and we became very good friends, all of us.
Do you have any fights?
Oh yes.
Over articles or what?
Yeah. Well, Joan Freeberg was also on it, and she had done some professional journalism, and she would say, well, she would sort of categorize the articles, and she would say, well, you know, this article's a priority, but she said, this is just fluff stuff, or this is just filler. And we would argue over what was filler or not. And we had fights with Jerry Goldstein because he kept signing. Everybody had their own page to paste up,
Yeah.
and he would sign his name. And Arnold would scream at him, you know, nobody signs their name to a page. And Jerry would say, and he always had photographs.
Yeah.
And he'd always stick his photographs in without permission. You know.
Mm.
And he would come in with his flip-flop things, and his feet were always very dirty. And so Arnold, and he had that toenail disease, fungus.
Mm-hmm.
So Arnold said he had to wear shoes and socks if he wanted to come to the collective. So he did that, and then he would come to the collective. He had a big shopping cart just full of things, you know,
Yeah.
his papers, and he would open up a can of something and eat it out of the can, and it smelled awful. Nobody knew what it was, and some kind of canned soup. So
Where did you meet?
we mostly met at Arnold's. He had an upstairs at that time
Mm-hmm.
that was not being used,
Mm-hmm.
so we met up there.
Okay.
And, yeah, that's where we usually met.
Mhm.
No.
What possessed you to get on the collective in the first place?
Well, I was always impressed with the Beachhead, and felt. I think there was somebody said if you want to join the Beachhead, you have to attend 3 meetings
Mm-hmm.
in a row. And so, I was working full time, and I had 2 daughters and to raise. They were in junior high and so forth. So I didn't have a lot of time to go to meetings and things, but I thought, well, I could give up a Saturday. And I loved it. So I just would show up, and you do what you feel you could do. And I was good at paste up, and I was good at things. So some of those things, but I wasn't very good at writing articles. So I sort of went into graphic stuff. But I felt that was my contribution to Venice culture.
So you did mostly graphics and
Well, and then we would read the articles aloud, and then we would all vote on the article,
Sure.
whether or not to put it in or not. If it's too long, we just have to ask the author to. So there are all little errands that everybody had to do. Plus, we were selling ads.
Did you ever write under another name for the Beachhead?
No, but I did some of my drawings as Amelia America.
Mm-hmm.
And I collaborated with Arnold Springer in response to Tom Victory, who wrote sort of a gossip column in the Argonaut. So Arnold said he wanted to have a column called Dawn Defeat, to sort of counteract Tom Victory. And so I made a drawing of a glamorous type woman that we put in, and the byline was Dawn Defeat. And then Arnold would write this article about who was seen with whom and so on. It was a lot of fun.
So Arnold was Dawn
He was
Defeat.
Dawn Defeat.
There was a lot of speculation over
Yeah.
who it was.
It was Arnold.
Yeah.
And but I was talking with Chuck Bloomquist, and my daughter was interested in astronomy, and he's an astronomer, and so he invited us to go to the desert for some viewing, and the other members of the collective invited themselves along, and so that's how we formed our Joshua Tree Club. So we would go out, the Free Venice Astronomy Group. To get a group campsite, you had to be a bona fide recognized group. So Chuck Bloomquist called us the Free Venice Astronomy Club. And so we got group campsites out there, and we would go every spring and fall for 30 years.
Did everybody go who was on the collective?
No.
No.
No, not everybody went. Some went, but there was a hardcore group of us always went. There's always other people that kind of came along. And we had a lot of fun out there, and we would talk about what was going on. In fact, when Ruth Galanter was asked to run for city council, she was camping with us, and she had to make the decision over the weekend. And so we were discussing it with her. So that was...
Now, what was the biggest issue the Beachhead grappled with when you were on the collective?
The biggest issue that was happening in Venice, or the biggest issue in our participation?
Well, yeah, that the Beachhead wrote about and was involved in publicizing or...
Oh, I think the biggest issue was Pat Russell's campaign. And having Ruth run against Pat Russell. And Doug Christmas, who ran the Ace Gallery. And we did a lot of cartoons about him. I'm trying to remember some of the issues. I think it was that he had this art gallery, and he was bringing in these big name New York artists, and he was not showing the local artists. One issue. There were problems. The renters were having problems. We covered a lot of that was happening. And that was mostly what I could think of at this time.
So you were on the collective when the campaign happened between Galanter and Russell?
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about what the Beachhead did about that? Or
No, I don't remember.
okay.
I just remember that how devastated we were when Ruth was attacked.
Yeah.
And you know, we didn't know if she was going to live or die or what. And I know that most Abneys or Lance Diskin camped out at her hospital door, guarding her.
Okay, any other comments you have about the Beachhead, or?
Well, I'd like to tell a couple of stories I've told other people last night. One was that we all sold ads, and there was a business in Venice, I don't remember the name of the business, that had put in a couple of ads at the Beachhead, and he never paid for them, and he left, and we found out he was in Vancouver. So Chuck Bloomquist traveled a lot at his work. So he was in Vancouver, and one Sunday morning while he was there, he looked this guy up, went banging on his door, and said, "Are you so-and-so that used to have this business in Venice, California?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "Well, I'm from the Free Venice Beachhead, and you owe us $42.50 for these 2 months of ads." So the guy was a little stunned, but he said, well, okay. He said, I'll mail it to you. And of course, he never did. And another thing that happened was we got sued because we used we used to exchange papers with other alternative papers around the country. And sometimes we cut out a little graphic that we liked and put it in our paper. Well, this one paper was going to sue us because they thought we had a lot of money. And so the only person that had any property was Arnold. He owned his house, and nobody else did own anything, you know. So we were all kind of in an uproar about that. So we called Steve Clare. So he wrote a letter saying, well, you know, we were sorry if we stepped on their toes, and that it wasn't anything malicious about it, and that nobody had any money. We were just a volunteer organization, and so forth and so on. And we were able to assuage their anger. They let us off the hook.
And the Beachhead was saved for another day.
Yeah, there's one more story. There was a guy that owned a restaurant, and he hadn't paid his advertising bill. So Arnold got people together. I couldn't go that night, but everybody got dressed up, and they went to this restaurant, and they ordered $80 worth of food, which was what the guy owed. And when the bill came, Arnold said, thank you very much. That pays for the ads that he had on our paper.
Great.
That was before Arnold wore a dress. But he wore a very interesting combination of clothes. He'd wear striped pants and a sort of patterned houndstooth jacket and another kind of striped shirt and a flowered tie, all in the same basic colors of blues and purples. So he was into his image at that stage.
Emily, you're no longer on the Collective, but you're very active in Venice. Would you like to say something about some of your current activities? Or?
Well, we're working very hard, and I hope you can get this to Milton Takai on the Venice Japanese American Memorial Monument, which is going up on the corner of Lincoln and Venice, where over 1,000 Japanese Americans or people of Japanese descent were taken to prison in Manzanar. And this all started through the Peace and Freedom Party and the Beachhead. And I think it was around 2010, the Beachhead printed an article about it, and they had a picture of the building that's still there on that corner. And a young man, 15 years old, who was at Venice High, took it to his social studies teacher, who was a Japanese American. And so she told them the story about how they were taken and everything was taken from them. And the students were so incensed, they wanted to do something. So she said, well, let's write a letter to our councilman and say we need some kind of marker there. And Bill Rosendahl was the councilman, and he was very taken with the story, having been of German descent and been discriminated against during the Second World War. So he had them go down to City Hall, and they made a declaration that this was unjust and that we would try to have some kind of mark there. So Beachhead printed all the letters and printed all this information, and we resulted in, I called up Phyllis Hayashibara and said, I'm with the Venice Arts Council, and we'd like to have some kind of committee to try to get this marker in place. And she was excited about it, and so we called a meeting, and we formed this ad hoc committee of people from all kinds of organizations in Venice, a lot of Japanese American organizations, and represented from the Peace and Freedom Party, the Venice Arts Council, and so forth. So we had neighborhood council people that only showed up a couple of times. So that's still in process. It's taken us many years because the city and Caltrans can't seem to agree on who has jurisdiction. But once we get that taken care of, we think will happen in a couple of months. Then we could order the monument and get it up. And it's we've had a lot of fundraisers, and we've raised $100,000. Half of that was from an NPS, a National Park Service grant, which is matching grant. We have to spend so much money, and then they reimburse us for half of it. So we've done very well with it. It's been very well received. And we also worked on the Beat Poets monument walls that are down at the beachfront. There are 4 areas where the Beat Poets have part of their poetry etched in the walls, and they were damaged by the Reckitt Park Service power hosing the graffiti off the walls, and they damaged the letters. So Suzanne Thompson was working on that project and in charge of that one, and we've restored two areas, the police substation and the 17th Street bathroom. We have 2 more bathrooms that we're trying to get permission to finish, so we'll be done with that. And there's a 3rd project where we're restoring the benches on the oceanfront walk that house 22 tiles that have a graphic history of Venice. They were installed during the Centennial 2000, and some of those benches are deteriorating and we're losing the tiles. So we're working on that, and we published a book to raise money, and the book has been very popular. And so those 3 projects have certainly kept us busy.
This has been Jim Smith talking with Emily Winters, former Beachhead Collective member, artist, and Venice activist. Thank you, Emily.
Venice actress?
Activist.
Oh, I thought you said. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Wow. It was like watching, for me, I could see double vision. I could see Emily and I could see the screen. It was almost like 3D.
Yeah.
It was very, you were